It's great to be here in Vanderbijlpark and out of Joburg. Let me start off by asking, how many people in the audience own and have and drive their own cars and are essentially car captive? So please raise your hands if you have a car. Okay, so how many of you just wish when you get your first salary, the first thing you're going to do is head off and buy yourself a car? Okay, so everyone either owns a car or absolutely desires at some point to have a car. So I'm going to talk a little bit about transport, cars, but most importantly, I want to talk to you today about people and the fact that transport is very much about justice. My own story in relation to transport is I was a local government councillor in the city of Johannesburg from the period 2000 up to the March elections 2006. And I had worked very hard in my local area. I was not the ward councillor. It was an opposition ward. It was run by the Democratic Alliance. I was a member of the African National Congress. And I had worked incredibly hard between 2000 and 2006. And the ANC had given me the opportunity to contest the ward where I lived, which is Ward 69 in Johannesburg. And I was really excited because I had worked so hard for these 6 years together with the local ANC branch, which is known as the ANC Helen Joseph branch. And my assumption was that winning this election was going to be easy. People knew us, we had worked with them, we had fought slumlording and a range of issues on urban degradation in Brixton. And on the election campaign, we had brought top ministers and MECs into the ward. We'd run the best election campaign we could have. So it was just a matter of, we were going to win. And the results started coming in one polling station after another. There were 5 or 6 voting districts in the ward. We'd won the first one. We'd won the second one. We'd won the third one. But there was one voting station that we lost by such a big margin that it gobbled up all the gains we had made in the rest of the ward. And I had just lost Ward 69. And I remember sitting there not knowing what to say to people who had worked really hard for months on end on this election campaign. And the next thing, the mayor of the city of Johannesburg called me in, and he said, I'm appointing you onto my mayoral committee, and you are going to head the portfolio transport. And I came home, and my husband Salim sitting there said, oh, you got just transport. And so my journey with transport has really been that it's not just transport, that in fact it's just transport, that transport is about justice, that transport is about human rights. And I intend to share with you why transport and justice are just so important. We live, unfortunately, in a country where our cities were built to divide. So CBDs were located, central business districts, close to white suburbia, separated through highways, through railway stations and rail lines, and leaving townships on the periphery of CBDs. A system deliberately designed to keep people as far apart from each other as possible, but sufficiently close to draw on their labor as and when required. And so today, 20 years into democracy, we still sit with an apartheid, spatially planned city where the poor continually be allocated on the periphery of economic opportunity. So how do we change that? So those of you who raised your hands in the audience and said you own a car, I want you to think about how many homes your car has. How many of you park your cars at home in a garage at night? Those of you who do have cars. So your car has a home at your home. How many of you have a parking bay at your office or where you work and you park your car in that parking bay? Those of you who own cars. So your car has a home at your home. Your car has a home at your office. Your car has a home at your local shopping mall. Your car has a home on this university parking lot. So we say in the inner city of Johannesburg, when you ask, why don't we locate people closer to economic opportunity? And people say, there's no land in the inner city of Johannesburg. Has anyone seen the multi-story parking lots that are there? So those cars have more right to that land than people do to be housed in that same land. We have to start thinking about how we reuse space. And the one person, one car culture is not the way to build people-centered cities of the future. You know that 60 cars with one person in each of them, you can imagine, visually imagine 60 cars all lined up and how much physical space they require. Take those 60 people out of their cars, put them onto one bus. How much space does that require? Take those 60 people out of the bus and give them bicycles. How much better for our cities? Take those 60 people off bicycles, get them to walk. What phenomenally different cities we would have. How many of you have to endure from time to time Joburg's horrendous traffic jams? So you sit there, frustrated, angry, running late for an appointment even though you've woken up really early and you want to be at work on time. More recently, even the former president of this country had to get off in a Joburg gridlock situation, President Thabo Mbeki, leave his car and walk to an engagement because otherwise he was going to be late for a memorial service. Is this really the quality of life we want to leave our children, where they spend 3-4 hours a day commuting from point A to point B, and we think that if we build bigger freeways and just expand the freeway system, make more space for cars, that this is going to improve life in our cities? I want to say that what we need to do is turn the pyramid on its head. So right now, transport issues, if you tune into any radio station in South Africa, and if they had a talk show on transport, what are the things you think people would talk about? Traffic jams? Potholes? Traffic signals that don't work? E-tolls? So whose issues are these? Believe it or not, even though Johannesburg has those horrible traffic jams, 2/3 of Johannesburg households do not have access to a private car. Yet, public discourse in our cities, in our country, is dominated by the issues of the private car user. Coming here this morning, at some point, Salim and I, okay, so we were not one person, one car, we were 2 people in the car, still not that great. At one point, just as we left our home, we were the only car on this really wide street. I counted 10 people walking. On that stretch of street, there was no sidewalk at all to accommodate people who were walking. So essentially, because we own a car, somehow we're more important than those people who have to walk. Note how many informal settlements in South Africa are located close to a freeway system or a transport system. Now, the children who live in those shacks, some suffer lung diseases from the air pollution of cars that their parents will never own. Why do we continue to perpetuate this kind of injustice in our cities? A city, and Enrique Peñalosa, the former mayor of Bogota, has really coined this sentiment. An advanced city is not one where everybody drives a car. An advanced city is one where the general worker in a company can share space with the CEO of that company on public transport, and they both can be perfectly comfortable to rub shoulders with each other, irrespective of what title they might hold in the company. I contend that part of the challenge for South Africa is that cars have become, like in so many other places in the world, status symbols. I contend that part of the challenge is that all decision makers, whether they are political or administrative, are car captive and have no sense of the reality of the public transport system, of the reality of having to walk in our cities or cycle in our cities. So all of you at some point have been under the age of 18. Everyone under the age of 18 is a potentially captive public transport user. Where's the voice of all of these people that needs to be heard in the transport arena? Hopefully, life expectancy is increasing, and hopefully many of you will live to the age of over 80. If you are over 80, and God forbid, but your vision is not that good, and you're no longer able to drive your private car, what alternatives are going to be available to you? I am contending, and I'm saying to all of us, that we have to rethink space making, city making, and the only way to do that is to put the needs of pedestrians, whether they are young children, whether they are elderly people, whether they are mothers pushing prams, whether they are people in wheelchairs, at the center of how we design infrastructure. Wide sidewalks for people to walk on. The minute people are walking, areas become safer because there are more and more eyes on the street. The more space we have for people to walk, the less fatalities on the road, because in fact, road crashes kill more pedestrians than they do private car users. The bicycle is a great alternative for most of our cities. Let's build the infrastructure so that people can cycle safely, being environmentally conscious, and then we don't all have to sit in our cars, stationary cars, waiting to get to a gym to ride a bicycle that in fact goes nowhere. So let's ride a bicycle and improve our quality of life. Let's ride a bicycle and save money. Let's ride a bicycle and improve the environment. It's a win-win all round. But there is no public voice for pedestrians. There is no public voice for cyclists. It's beginning to emerge. There is no real public voice for public transport users. Of course, if you're a Gautrain user, you have voice. Because when the Gautrain has a problem, you jump onto your phone and you say to Radio 702, "John, do you know we've been waiting for the Gautrain for the last 10 minutes? And people have been waiting at Stratford Station, Orange Farm, for 1 hour for a Prasa Metro rail train that has not arrived. And nobody has said anything to anybody because somehow that life is lesser in value than the life of someone who uses Gautrain. And so I contend that we can't, as South Africa, afford to have a classist public transport system where we have one standard of public transport for the rich and a very mediocre standard for the rest. That in fact, even if we are car captive, we must raise our voices for better public transport in our country. And of course, that unfortunately, and I know that this is uncomfortable for those of us who are private car captive, unfortunately, the private car must come much lower down on the rung of city planning and country planning because the majority of people simply don't have access to one. So I'm saying that just transport has shaped movements across the world. Think Mahatma Gandhi. What shaped Gandhi's experience of South Africa? When Gandhi first arrived here, he had the audacity to book himself a first-class ticket on a train and was very unceremoniously flung off that train. That shaped Gandhi's first experience of South Africa, and it was about justice and transport. Rosa Parks sat down to stand up for her rights. And in that sheer act of sitting down on a seat in a bus, she gave birth to the civil rights movement that would in fact change the lot of a people in the United States of America. So I say to you today that transport is about a lot more than vehicle or mode. It's not about a shiny train. It's not about a great Rea Vaya bus. It's not even about a great station in the middle of the road that makes you feel like you're in a great space. It's about what it does to the dignity of the people who use that system. And cities can and must be about people. And so there are some images and some sense that maybe we're beginning to move slowly in that direction. Gandhi Square, Johannesburg, without the buses or not too many of them there, but a people space where people can walk and people can feel like the space belongs to them, like they don't have to huddle out of the way the minute a car is coming and a vehicle is coming, that they have the right as human beings to be there. Transformed public transport. Slowly, we're getting there, but not as fast as I think we should be. And so, I'm hoping that by the time I leave this stage today, I would have had all of your voices join my voice to say, let each one of us become transport activists in the communities where we live. And let's understand that cities are for people, not for cars. Thank you very much.